Silent Hill F is the latest game in a wave of classic horror franchises being revitalized through modern remakes and sequels. Unfortunately, I can't review Silent Hill F as a Silent Hill game since I never played any of the others. Not for lack of interest, just lack of access. I only recently got out of an almost 20-year-long exclusive relationship with a series of magical Sony boxes. Now that I think about it, I might have been groomed because the relationship started almost as soon as I stopped sucking my thumbs and started twiddling my thumbsticks. But sucking my thumbs in anticipation I was as I booted up Silent Hill F. Really teeing up those negative review headlines, aren't you? At least Lies of P had a more optimistic naming approach. To summarize my thoughts, Silent Hill F is a very well, albeit unevenly written game with substandard design choices for a horror game. The story is written by Ryukishi07, author of the horror cult classic Higurashi When They Cry visual novel/anime series. Apparently, he took the advice if it ain't broke, don't fix it too hard because he ripped the setting and story beats straight from Higurashi. A rural village where the close-knit superstitious community pressures and influences every decision the characters make. The main character's friends go crazy and try to kill them, but in the end it's revealed our protagonist was the crazy one all along because of meddling supernatural forces. But not really, because the supernatural forces are really just hallucinations from being drugged. But plot twist, the supernatural forces are real after all, but never mind because the entire town was evacuated and or destroyed because a volcano exploded. Really pulling from the same well, eh, Ryukishi07? At least it's a more refined version. The protagonist, Hinako, and cultural pressure she faces are much more compelling this time around, especially if you're from the eastern part of the world. A lot of the dialogue will sound familiar, if not verbatim, something you've heard your parents or grandparents say, so full marks for dramatic realism. But the tension that the game starts with evaporates faster than the fog settles once combat is introduced and takes a serious nosedive once you start getting sent to the Shadow Realm. Combat is simultaneously fast-paced, dash-heavy, and slow and clunky. You have a light attack, a heavy attack, and a special focus attack, but the heavy attacks completely overshadow all of them because they do more damage, track enemies, and stun most enemies long enough for stamina to recover fully. So using anything but the heavy attacks makes you look like a clown caught with their pants down. Clown with their pants down was also how my 6th birthday party went. I played on the default difficulty settings, and the resource economy may have flat out ruined the combat for me. There were simply far too many health pickups, only slightly balanced by a small inventory limit. But even then I was face tanking hits because I was carrying the equivalent of a small pharmacy in my bag. Either the inventory system should have been removed entirely, turning it into a heal as you go system to balance the hospital's worth of healing items scattered across the map, or the health pickup should have been far rarer with the Resident Evil style item box to deposit any straggling extras you happen to find. It's not just the massive amount of health pickups that diminish the creepiness of the enemies. The monster designs start out inspired but quickly devolve into a game of how many appendages can we stick onto one body. Here's a monster made of 10 heads, here's one with 20 stomachs, here's one with 30 pulsating lumps of flesh. This isn't scary, it's just visually chaotic. I call this phenomenon the nightcoreification of monster design, taking a concept that's solid on its own and cranking the BPM up so far that it loses all coherence. Just as you start feeling trapped with monsters in the foggy village and look for a way to escape Stephen King's The Mist, the unofficial game of the official movie, the story plucks you right out of the setting and plops you into a generic dark abyss where you fight monsters and faff about for a while doing the daily wordle before plopping you back into the village. This sucked all the tension the desolate village had been building straight out the first time it happened and grew successively more tiresome through the course of the game, like a bad mid-roll ad I couldn't skip. Speaking of skipping and skipping off speakers, every character in Silent Hill F falls neatly into one of two camps: the protagonist's circle of friends, Rinko, Sakugo, Shiu, and Teen Wolf, or her family, her mother, dad, and sister. The narrative focuses on the friend group for the first 60%, only shifting gears in the last 40% to focus on the family, which is a shame because I thought the family members were infinitely more compelling and complex characters. Girls being catty and jealous that you're friendly with their crush, boring, hating your father and pitying your mother for being stuck with him, but kind of hating her as well for enabling your father and trying to mold you into her, compelling. It's unfortunate then that the interesting plot threads start getting picked up around the time the game's budget and combat starts losing steam. The early to mid-game puzzles, collectibles, and boss fights all revolve around the friends, while the late-game chapters tied to the parents get recycled areas and reskin enemies as their boss fights. Maybe that's a metaphor for how Hinako's parents aren't that special, they're just another pair of monsters enforcing gender roles onto Hinako. See? They're so well written they naturally invite analysis and reflection. Now's a good time to mention I played with the original Japanese audio with English subtitles, and even though I shared a vague cultural familiarity of treating women like shit, I still feel like I missed some of the subtext. especially when there would be rooms covered in kanji, which I really felt the game wanted me to read, but to my illiterate and Japanese self, they could be saying anything from die 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 to directions for a homoerotic meetup. This extends to some of the puzzles where if you lack culture-specific knowledge, you simply can't solve them. 0 points for Silent Hill's culturally biased puzzles, and 1 for the College Board and their culturally unbiased SATs. 0 points to both for increasing their price from $60 to $70 over the last 5 years.